Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Season 1, Episode 12, Big Brothers of Corona. This is the episode in which Eugene is actually a character, and he and Lance, Strongbow, are here both trying to help reform two kids, angry and red, from a life of crime. Cool. Right at the beginning, we see Eugene actually doing the job I already suggested for. In fact, he even specifically mentions the name Thief Catcher. Just like I was talking about in the previous episode. So holy crap, somebody paid attention. I'm shocked. We then cut to Cassandra, who's like, Rapunzel, your trap is really, really obvious. And yeah, of course it was. That was the trap. So Cassandra naturally falls for it and then breaks her leg. Cool. Cut to Lance, who really, really wants kebabs. Actually, kebabs sound really good right about now, so I can't blame him. But the point is, kebabs. Eugene figures out the thief's method pretty quickly. Gives some credit here for the fact that he deconstructs the testimony enough to be like, okay, and boop, here we go. Quick and dirty, Shazam, caught. We're like 3 minutes into the episode, and they've already caught the thief. So obviously that's not the thrust of the episode. Okay, well, it turns out it's two children. Okay, nope, that tracks. Interesting shift. Now it's all about taking care of the two kids. Usually this type of episode sucks. Let's see where they go with it. Meanwhile, Cassandra did actually break her leg. I wasn't kidding earlier. I'm actually vaguely amused by that. She also has this wonderful bit where she has a line. I don't really do the whole getting nurtured thing. Considering her parentage, that doesn't surprise me. You know, orphan, raised by the guard captain. Yeah, that... She probably doesn't actually know what the word nurture even means. So the kids run off. They catch them. I like that they don't show them catching them. They just catch them. It's a nice little jump cut sort of thing. First rule of not being a thief. Don't steal. I'm going to be honest. That actually did get a laugh out of me. And there's this nice bit where he says, you don't really want to be thieves. It's not a viable long-term career. Trust us. Actually, yeah. Thieves are kind of like adventurers in most settings. They don't tend to live long. It's like, all right, oh, made one mistake or crossed one wrong person, splat. And that's usually how that kind of thing goes. Naturally, the kids who are very, very interested in thievery only really start to listen when Eugene starts telling them tips on how to thieve. They also name drop the Baron, which the kids visibly react to. Again, by the way, I think this is our third overall episode referencing the Baron, so I'm just waiting for that to pay off. I'm wondering if he's like the starter villain, you know, the beginning villain that we have to deal with. That's usually a thing in shows like this. You have your low-tier threat, and that's kind of giving the hero something to deal with, but have some level of recurringness. Yeah, so... yeah, exactly, 040. It makes sense. It makes a degree of sense. And the Baron has certainly been being built up over several episodes now. I guess Lady Kane was the tutorial boss, but, like, when I say she's the tutorial boss, I mean it. Like, she was the this is what combat is boss. If she shows up again, we'll see. I don't know. I have no idea which direction they're taking this in. Yeah, she's Yakra, exactly. The actual first boss, we actually talked about that very recently. When we were doing the whole first boss, first dungeon, first gameplay point in the Final Fantasy series. You remember that? Just a couple weeks ago. I kind of wanted to keep going with that, but time. And the idea struck me, of course, because the first boss is usually not the first real boss. The first boss is usually just a tutorial boss, like the Mist Dragon in FF4, versus the Octomammoth, which is the actual first boss of FF4. Stuff like that, right? Interesting to think about, and it does kind of make me think, because that would actually make the Dragon Tank the first real boss of Chrono Trigger, and I would stand by that. Even just in terms of structure and design, the Dragon Tank is just much, much more complex and difficult of a boss fight than the previous one. You also run into it with less people, and it's specifically resistant to several of your attacks. It also gets worse the lower on health it gets, and the more pieces you knock off of it. So, yeah, as opposed to Yakra, who's basically just a don't attack during X amount of time fight, just like every other tutorial boss is in this era. What is this square in doing that? If 4, 5, 6, and 7, as well as Yakra, are all bosses, which it's attack now, don't attack now. And that's the fight. I'm getting off topic. Point being, the Baron. So now it's like, all right, We've got to figure out how to scare these kids straight. Pro tip, scaring kids straight never works. So naturally they go to take them to other people because they're too pretty to be scary. And yeah, that leads to Shorty. He only showed up briefly, but it is worth noting that it was just this instant, and as usual, his only shtick was being gross. Again. Anyways, poor Hookfoot. Immediately taken advantage of by the poor kids. I do like the bit where the kids and Eugene are just kind of honest with each other. And Eugene is like, listen, honestly, I'd probably still be in the same boat as you. Wait! I've got it! And he introduces them to Rapunzel and Pascal. Okay, that works. In fact, that works instantly. It's also the first thing that gets Red to talk. So they have some fun, and there's some lighthearted moments. And there's this bit where Angry flat out asks, why are you trying? Usually, I'm going to take a nap during lunch, don't worry. Usually adults just try to get rid of us. We know they have a large orphanage. We know the orphanage has been around for a while. We know the kingdom in general has an orphan problem. We also know the Baron is a crime lord in the region. A lot of these dots on the map kind of connect with each other is what I'm trying to say. Assuming, of course, that this is, you know, something that is actually being done on purpose. As usual, the writer factor is kind of low. I'm trying to pay attention to details and assuming that at least some of these will pay off in the future. At this point, we cut to Rapunzel and Cassandra, who are continuing to have issues. I do like how the A-plot and B-plot actually dovetail into each other, even though it's about the Aesop, which is just kind of... It's a good Aesop. They do too simplistic of a look at it, but this is a 22-minute episode, right? So it kind of makes sense that it's just going to be the kind of thing where they just kind of do a brief glance at a fairly complex topic. Because that's right, you can't force your help on people. That usually doesn't work. Even if you are trying to help, even if you are actually interested in helping those people. You can't just say, all right, Mr. Red, here you go. Boom! And now Mr. Red is a lemur, right? Like, I can't just do that. Trust me, Mr. Red wants to be a lemur. I also have to say, I really feel bad for Cassandra. I have trouble sleeping, in general. Obviously, I had trouble sleeping literally last night. But no, in general, I have trouble sleeping. And so, this kind of thing, like people walking, you know, outside my door, that is absolutely the kind of thing that would keep me up and would drive me bonkers. So, yeah. We also see that the guard captain is still kind of a dick. I've been liking him less and less basically every episode he's been in. And I noticed something, that while he's at least a little bit decent towards Cassandra, kind of, ultimately, he's kind of one note too. He's the guard captain. Like, I don't even know his frickin' name, and that says all it needs to, doesn't it? He's the guard captain. Yeah, he was never exactly an endearing character in the movie, so that makes sense. So that at least it's in character, but it means that he's kind of frustrating in scenes like this. Because there's several scenes where his bias just oozes out of him. When he has to fire both Eugene and Lance, he does so with relish. He is happy to fire them. And when the king forces him to offer them a job again, he is begrudging in the fact that, I guess I'll go ahead and hire these two people that just reformed two children. And by the way, did you notice that Eugene and Lance are actually pushing for reformation? I'll give the king credit for that one too. Whereas the guard captain is mostly just focused on punishment. Food for thought. So then we see Gideon Emery as Weasel, I think was his name. Yeah, honestly, the guard captain could legitimately be a villain in this show. Yeah, Lorthamar shows up. Or Fenris, if you prefer. And the two exchange themselves for the kids, which I am astonished they actually honored that deal. And then we see the kids have a giant money pile, which they're going to use to buy passage out of town, which would make more sense if someone had actually coordinated with the art team and decided to make the money pile be like a bag of loot. And instead it's like 5 bags overflowing with gold items. Unless this, I'm sorry, I know nobody cares about economics, but I'm sorry. This actually broke my suspension of disbelief so hard that I kept waiting for the episode to explain it. Either this kingdom is suffering from rampant, and I mean rampant, inflation, which, I mean, Or what would have worked for me is if the kids have no idea of the actual value of things, so they steal all this tremendous amount of loot so they can dump it on people to buy a ticket to a boat, and then the guy's like, this is a lot of, okay, here's your tickets, kid. But no, instead, it's 5 bags of gold. That is a crap ton of money by today's standards. Never mind, what is this, like 200-300 years ago, something like that? Yeah, thanks for the tip. You could have done something with this, then they don't. I know, it's a minor detail. It's just, it threw me so hard because the whole episode has been building up to this idea and concept of the kids having to steal because they need to either bail or pay off the Baron. And they're rich. It destroys the impetus, right? It gets rid of the plot point. We have to keep stealing. Let me just enjoy my golden milk bath with gem encrusted. Like, you get it? It just ruins the scene and kind of casts this weird shade on the whole episode. Whatever. I'm gonna go ahead and move forward a little bit. let's just skip past this. So, they have a good action sequence. Most of the action sequences in the show are very well storyboarded, very fun stuff. Usually I don't care for these type of characters, the kids, that is to say, but they managed to be pretty decent. They obviously, like, they could have gone a lot of ways with this, and they'd go pretty much straight middle of the road, but it actually works for me. They obviously are selfish, and they are thieves, but they're not dicks about it. And they do recognize that someone cares about them and reciprocate that almost immediately. I mean, you saw how closely Red and Lance bonded almost immediately in the background in almost every shot, right? So the kids actually work pretty well for me. I hope we get to see them at some point in the future. So they beat Gideon Emery. Fenris is in chains. They go back, restore all the things. We did it. Go hire them. No, it's good. I'm going to the chef. And then, oh, and Cassandra and Rapunzel kind of make up. It's a weird scene. Cut to credits. Fun little episode. Still doing this slice of life, I've noticed. And I'm not really upset about that. It's just, it is interesting to me how much of this show is slice of life. We're over halfway through the season now. Ah, I did notice that, Lord Haremont. The first time you didn't need to steal because someone was happy to give something to you. Oof. Ah, give me. What are we thinking? What color are we thinking? I'm leaning a little bit towards orange myself, especially since there's what might be establishment. Again, I'm sort of operating on faith still at this point. The quality is still there. I enjoyed the episode. Remember, orange is very good. That's what orange means. Yellow means good. And we do have some internal continuity, and we're still building up the Baron. The Act 1 villain is probably going to be like I'm just picturing now we get down to Queen for a day and the villain is revealed and it's the Baron. And he's this horrible crime lord of Ultra Doom. And Eugene has to fight against the Baron and finally settle his past and so forth and so on. Yeah, no, orange is solid. I think we're going to call that another orange. That's 3 oranges in a row. That's a pretty good streak, actually. We've definitely been pushing upwards, which brings us to the next episode, which is Season 1, Episode 13, The Wrath of Ruthless Ruth. I didn't know Linnea Ruth was in this. Either way, I'll see you in a bit.